What's up, guys? Just starting off a new build. Going to basically create a backup of my SAM 220 frame, which I currently have already built right here. This is a great frame for me. 220 again, running 2600 Emax motors, and it's fully kissed out with 24 amp KISS ESCs. So I'm going to basically build a backup. This one is just an orange one. This one is going to be green. I figured I'd show you guys how to go through the process of completely setting up a kissed out quad from start to finish. So what you're going to need for this is going to be a frame, obviously, lots of heat shrink, receiver if you're doing Spectrum. This is a one that reads out telemetry. Power distribution board, you can choose any one. I've got my KISS flight controller right here on my 5-arm, and I've already wired in the positive and negative into the appropriate positive and negative little holes there. Simple job. Positive and negative goes to the power distribution board to power it up, and this KISS flight controller doesn't need a step down. It can basically go straight to battery or any other positive and negative from the power distribution board to give power to the flight controller. So first thing I want to do is make sure I have my power wires for my battery soldered in there, and that's pretty much the biggest set of pads on most power distribution boards. Right there where it says battery is where I'm going to put it. So I'm going to start off by putting some solder. I'm going to go ahead and pre-solder every pad on this power distribution board. Now that every pad is pre-soldered, I can go ahead and start thinking about what I'm going to solder in first. And since I'm going to be running with KISS 24 amp ESCs, I'm probably going to go ahead and solder the pads on those and get the positive and negatives going onto the power distribution board next. Alright, so blooming out, I'm here, and we're going to start off with the battery. I've got an XT60 connector right here. This little thing is what the battery is going to be plugging into. Our LiPo batteries, they all plug into those types of things. Every single battery has one of these, and that must go into there to start it up, right? So you're familiar with that. So what I'm going to do, since the little ends there have little holes, that's where the wires go into. In order for the wires to stick in there, though, you need to put some solder. So we'll put some solder. Alright, good amount of solder on that. Never hurts to put a little excess solder on these until that whole little barrel fills up, because it is going to require a good amount to stick.
A good amount of connectivity.
Yes. Alright, so those are in. Now what I want to do, let me get my 5-arm. There's my KISS flight controller, which we're obviously going to use in a little while. But what I'm going to do is put these little pieces of battery cable here and solder up each end so that it's not a bunch of frayed little strings. It kind of sticks together. Alright, so now that that's done, you probably guess what we're going to do here. We're going to put the negative in the negative. There's a little sign there. It says negative. Positive on the other side. So the black will go into negative. We're going to just heat everything up here and attempt to just slide it right in. A little blow. Give it a little tug test. Seems to be in there. Now we need to just do the same thing with the out. That's hot with the red. Gonna grab my handy dandy set of needle nose crimpers or needle nose pliers here. Heat up that little piece that we had in there earlier. Alright, so let's see what we've got here. Seems pretty well connected there. Give it a little tug. Seems to be staying. So that's good to go. Now what we want to do is grab some of the heat shrink, and what I want to do is cover the wires so they don't kind of get touched together when I'm plugging in my battery, or else that can cause a short circuit. So we get a little piece of heat shrink like that. To keep it nice and tight and avoiding any kind of debris like a leaf or something going in there and causing a bridge between the positive and the negative. So now we got that wrapped up nice with the heat shrink, we can get ready to go into the power distribution board. The main battery connector, negative to negative, positive to positive. Complete. Nice and tight. Next step is going to be to get the ESCs powered up from the power distribution board. And this is how we're going to do it. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and add some double-sided tape for each ESC, and then we'll be right back. Alright guys, so we got the double-sided tape on each arm here, as you can see. I'm going to go ahead and start placing my ESCs on each arm. So there we go, double-sided tape is there. Now with the assistance of my lovely girlfriend, I'm going to go ahead and apply solder to each positive and negative point here. That's good. Alright, all done adding the solder to each point here. What I'm going to need to do is prep my wires. I'm going to go ahead and supply power to each one using some good old-fashioned ESC wire. So it's important at this point to kind of remember or take note of how much wire you really need. You definitely don't want to have excess wire. So kind of take your wire. It's going to be some thick wire here, not the ESC wire, the servo cables. And basically just kind of, measure it out. ESC1 for KISS is going to be the front left one. So if ESC1 is here on my power distribution board, I want to just make sure I have enough room to go from here, positive and negative, all the way to here. So I'm going to cut my wire right about there just to give me enough slack to maybe go through some obstacles or holes within my side plates here if I need to. And that should be enough for the first ESC power cable. And we'll go ahead and rinse and repeat and join you back in a few moments here when we're done. We're about to solder on our power cables for our ESC. One red, one black goes from power distribution straight to each ESC to give them power. And then we'll have to later solder on two cables, which are known as the servo cables, straight to the flight controller from the ESCs. Alright, so that's good to go. Time to connect some ESCs to the flight controller, which is a little more tedious because there's little tiny pads there. And we'll get started with putting some solder on each of the positive and negatives for ESC1, ESC2, and ESC3, ESC4 at the bottom. We'll be back. Alright, I got every pad soldered up on the ESCs. I got a little bit of a little bit of solder on each pad on the flight controller. So I'm going to finish up connecting a positive and a ground to each one of the pads for PMW 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then we'll be back. I got all my wires hooked up for each ESC onto the KISS flight controller. The positive and the negative on the bottom pads for ESCs number 2 and 4, and at the top the ESC wires for ESC number 1 and 3. So I went ahead and put the power from aux 1 positive and negative right into the power for the board, which is going to power up the board, into the VIN positive and negative. And now I'm pretty much ready to start putting this thing together. So I'm going to put some spacers in between the flight controller and power distribution board to kind of eliminate vibrations, and that's always best practice. So I've got these little piece of nitro tubing that I cut real thin here as my makeshift vibration rings that I'm sliding on. And now I'm going to go ahead and put the flight controller on top. See what it's looking like. Looking pretty clean already. And we're just about ready to now start putting in the final touches. At this point, we're going to want to connect the servo cables to the appropriate locations here. Actually, I put this on incorrectly. This is supposed to go like this. Just like that. So I'm going to have my PMW 1 positive and negative going to PMW 1 ESC, which is front left, as we mentioned earlier. So I'm going to go ahead and get going on that. And that is it. So we basically just set up one ESC, and we have to just rinse and repeat for the rest of them. Shouldn't take long, but I'll probably time-lapse this so you don't have to watch me do it in slow motion. Alright, so looks like we've got all the ESCs with power, all the ESCs connected to the flight controller. At this point, all we're really missing is the power for the VTX and flight controller, which is going to come from, probably should have done this a little bit earlier, but I can move my ESC. There's another aux port right here, auxiliary 2, where I'm going to pull the power for the VTX, which in this case I'm going to use a Tramp VTX. Alright, there's my VTX. Gonna go ahead and just pre-tune these little two wires here. There's my auxiliary 2, positive, negative. Got that hooked up with some solder. Gonna go ahead and introduce the wires to the solder pads. There we go, positive, negative. And our VTX is in there like swimwear. Woo! Gonna go ahead and wrap up the VTX with some solder here. I mean, with some heat shrink, so it doesn't touch anything while we're in there flying around and short circuit anything, just like we did with the XC60 power connector, as you recall, ladies and gentlemen. Right, heat shrink wrapped around the VTX. Got the VTX hooked up, which is really all we needed to worry about. Now I can put my ESC back in. And ladies and gentlemen, we are just about done with our build, which is pretty exciting. Pretty exciting news. You hear, honey?
Whoop whoop.
Just about finished. Alright. Let's see, hopefully that'll fit nicely like that, the way it should. Now that we've got everything basically out of the way, we can start putting our motors on.